For me to confidently say it's in the top 20 is to say we'll worry about the order later. But I know that this one has a seat at the table, right? I know that this one has a place in the conversation. The year is 1994 and hip hop has cemented itself into the mainstream. In this series, we'll be discussing why this year is regarded as one of the greatest years in the history of rap. From New York icons like Nas and Biggie to the arrival of Southern rap in the form of Outkast or UGK, 94 was one of the biggest years in rap music. We'll look back at these classic albums, sharing why they're so great and why their impact meant so much to the culture. All right, man, let's get to it.
Bo, why is Notorious B.I.G's debut album Ready to Die on this list?
Biggie Smalls is the Jimi Hendrix of rap. And he's the Jimi Hendrix of rap in the sense that you will hear people talk about him being an all-time great, but in reality, we're only dealing with like 3 years worth of material. That was it. Like sometimes somebody shows up and they're such a supernova that they change the game and they seem so entirely unique. And all they had was a couple of records. Jimmy had 3, Biggie had 2, only one that we all agree upon as a classic, and that one is Ready to Die. Because somehow he and Sean Puffy Combs, as we called him then before we knew all of his business, figured out the perfect merger of a gangster aesthetic with the flashy aesthetic that people later, like it turned into that old shiny suit stuff that Puffy was doing, but at the perfect midpoint was this dude, and somehow they turned a dude who referred to himself as heartthrob never, black and ugly as ever, while also being fat, and all those things being true, made him into a sex symbol, made him into the life of the party, while never sacrificing the fact that he was the gangster. And all of it starts with this album right here.
Can we expand on his rise and fall? It's obviously a short window of time, but where is he up until the point of the album's release?
1993, there's a movie that comes out called Who's the Man, starring Dr. Dre, D-O-C-T-O-R Dre from New York, and Ed Lover. They were the hosts of Yo MTV Raps. They put this movie out, and it's got a banging ass soundtrack, just hardcore rap top to bottom. And one of the songs on it was called Party and Bullshit by a heretofore unknown Notorious B.I.G. So this is in April of 1993. And it was a banger, but it was just the beginning, kind of the whet the appetite for what was coming next. Fast forward about a year, and the Notorious B.I.G., a.k.a. Biggie Smalls, which is the name he wanted to originally go by, but there were copyright issues. There was another rapper named Biggie Smalls, and they were all stealing that name from a character from a blaxploitation movie. So Juicy comes out in August of 94. It is a rags to riches tale about how hip hop has taken somebody who just loved it and now he's rich. It was kind of the story of the way that we saw rap in a lot of ways. Those of us who came up absolutely loving it as an art, and then look how far it has gotten. And now it has gotten to the point where this dude could be rich off of rap. Was he actually rich? Completely different discussion. We don't really think that was the case at the time, but it sure felt like it. And that was close enough. So then September of 94 comes and the album is out and it bangs, bangs, bangs. Now the whole Bad Boy Records thing had already gotten started because you got Craig Mack and The Flavor in Your Ear that built it up. Biggie's on the remix. That's a huge deal. But the album comes out and it's really not like anything that we had heard. Sonically, it wasn't dissimilar from what else was coming out in New York. Like those beats from cats like DJ Premier, from Easy Mo B, they sounded very much like a Brooklyn record of the day. There's no question about that. But this dude, this was something else. This is something that had been described in later times by people like Shock G as Biggie Smalls was playing jazz. Like that's what his rapping was. The phrasing, the way he toned things, the B-I-G, P-O-P-P-A, different albums, same idea. Nobody was rapping in the way that he was. Nobody was putting together stories that were as vivid as the ones that he put together, with the sense of humor that he had about it, right? With the self-awareness that he seemed to have, and also with something that was very common and present in mid-90s hip-hop, this omnipresent concern about death creeping, about death being around the corner. Tupac always makes the argument that Ready to Die stole what he was working on for his album because it was all about death. Like Death Around the Corner is a song on Me Against the World. But the truth was, there was so much murder going on that people were singing murder carols and getting them on the radio at that time. This Is For My Homies in the Gangsta Lean was a top 10 pop hit, all about the homies dying and everybody being sad about it. So Biggie captured that, while also being like the gangster that made it all seem kind of fun? Like, are we really laughing about the way that you're robbing pregnant women? Yes, we're laughing about you robbing pregnant women. The shit was hilarious. But we're also hearing you talking about being in the club, right? A full night of going to the club, going out, getting something to eat after. Wholly and totally relatable material. And somehow that dude had us thinking he, of all people, was the coolest dude in the room.
What are your favorite tracks on the record, and why do you love them so much?
My favorite tracks on this record. One, Give Me the Loot. The moment that you realize he's actually playing both characters in the song, right? And, it don't take forever to figure out that's what's going on, but that's what's going on, and it's funny. Machine Gun Funk. Like, Easy Mo B coming off of this, you couldn't have told me there was that many people better than him at making beats at that point, because every beat that he had on there bang. Machine Gun Funk, Warning, Ready to Die. Oh, he did the What with Method Man. Every single thing that I've just told you was a banger. The original version of One More Chance. If you know the One More Chance from the DeBarge sample, the super smooth joint on the radio, it's a lot more nasty on the LP, just so you know. And guess what? Might be a better song. Everyday Struggle, banger. Big Papa, it's hard to do a song that's so obviously made for the radio and so obviously made for crossover appeal, but at the same time, doesn't seem to sacrifice anything in terms of authenticity and clarity. Unbelievable, which is one of the best DJ Premier beats that you're going to get. And then closing it out with Suicidal Thoughts, which is chilling. Like, it's one thing to be like, I think death is creeping around the corner and it's going to get me. It's another to end your whole record with a gunshot and the phone hitting the ground and a dial tone.
How was this album received by the public in 94?
It didn't get the 5 mics, right? It did not get the Illmatic treatment from what just earlier that year. It was not just roundly seen as, oh my God, the game has changed. At least not from the critics. I found that just about everybody I knew in Houston, Texas was like, hey, man, have you heard this one? Sides were drawn on the Tupac beef, and the Tupac side was definitely winning where I was. But it did not take long at all before people realized that we had a heat rock here. Cheo Hadari Coker acknowledged at the time that it was the best debut record since Ice Cube's America's Most Wanted 3 years earlier. This did not take long for people to catch on and figure out that something was brewing here, and it brewed.
Can we talk about his legacy and the idea that this is his only album that was released when he was alive?
So one thing to understand and appreciate is that in 1994, New York is not solidly on top of the rap game anymore. The boys from the West had come in and they were the biggest thing that were going. And New York takes that personally, right? It went from being about which borough had supremacy to the whole city seemed to be falling off. Nas coming out in 94 and Biggie coming out in 94 was the next generation of New York rap. And they were standing tall on the strength of this record. And this is the only one that came out when he was alive. The entire legend of Biggie Smalls, as it was built off of this one album and the singles and the videos and the differences in what Bad Boy was doing versus what anybody else had. Like, Biggie was the one guy, and maybe it was because he was kind of ugly, right? He was the one dude that had figured out how you could rap, make music for women without it sounding like you were pandering to them, right? Without sacrificing any hardcore credibility. He was the cat that figured it out in a way that nobody else had. It truly revived what people thought about New York rap. It put a jolt into things and moved into what the next 5 or so years of rap out of the city was going to be. It was that important. And then in 1997, he dies, right? Like, to give you a concept of really how short a time Biggie had, on September 13th, 1994, Ready to Die was released. On September 13th, 2 years later, Tupac died. 6 months after that, Biggie's dead. That is the arc of all of this. So if you had a feeling about Biggie as a rapper in that time, it came from this album. It was right here. It mattered that much. It was that big of a deal. And the most important part of it was such a New York record. It belonged only to one place at a time where that place needed records like Illmatic and Ready to Die to reestablish themselves as being the center of all things rap.
Can we talk about where this album stands in the legacy of hip hop all time? And what if Biggie and Tupac didn't die?
So if you're to ask me, this is probably one of the 20 greatest albums in the history of rap. And the problem is everybody whittles everything in rap to an idea of a top 5 that it almost sounds insulting when you say something might be top 20. But man, it's a lot of albums that have ever been made. For me to confidently say it's in the top 20 is to say we'll worry about the order later. But I know that this one has a seat at the table, right? I know that this one has a place in the conversation. There's no doubt in my mind that it is that good. I could go through great rappers that I could say, no, I don't think that person has an album this good. I don't think Tupac has an album this good. I don't think Scarface has an album that's this good. I don't think Ice Cube has an album that's this good. And these are some of the greatest rappers who ever walked the face of the earth. That's how good this record was. Now, the great what if for everyone to play is, what if Tupac and or Biggie had lived longer? With Tupac, it's impossible to know what would have happened with him because he was such an unpredictable live wire that to think that you knew where this was going to go, no clue. The question with Biggie and what if he stayed alive comes to, would he have stuck with Puffy had he stayed alive? That is the one where everything hinges. What direction does it go in? Because the truth is, if you go look at Sean Puffy Combs as record executive, post Biggie Smalls, the record isn't really that great. He knew how to make a star out of Biggie, but he knew how to make a star out of a star, is what it is that we are saying. Does Biggie stay there? Does Biggie decide to go out and work with other people? As the sound changes and as it gets flashier with what Puffy is doing, does he want to stay with that? And his big ass going to be out there wearing some shiny suit. Is that going to happen? It's almost impossible to tell where it goes. Does he wind up collaborating with more West Coast artists as things change? As Dr. Dre was trying to get out and do stuff with Nas, do we later get a hold of him doing something with Biggie? Does Biggie lean in more on doing the stuff with DJ Premier? He was so talented that any option that you throw out there, and by the way, he had demonstrated an affection for music all over the country at the time when rap was spreading across the country. There's no way to know where this would have gone with him because he literally could have gone anywhere. But we came to find out he was stuck with a dude that probably would have made his career worse. How long would it have taken for him to figure that out? How many of his people would he have been able to bring along with him? No one will ever have an answer for it. The only thing we know for certain is it is a shame that all we got out of quite possibly the greatest rapper who ever lived was 2 albums. Prize Picks is really simple to play. You can make your picks and submit your entry in less than 60 seconds. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. So make sure you go to prizepicks.com/Bomani and use code Bomani for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/Bomani. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.